We are depleting our savings dramatically. We take $10,000 a month out of savings, sell our stocks, whatever my financial advisor does. I don't actually even know because I don't want to know because it makes me ill to think about, because I had a good nest egg to buy a house at one point in life, and now it's paying for daycare.
I'm sorry, did I hear that correctly? Did she just say that she takes $10,000 a month out of their savings to pay for childcare? Is your daycare located at a 5-star hotel where they feed your kids golden ice cream like it's some sort of Mr. Beast video? How is your childcare that expensive? Well, she's destroying her savings to pay for this, so I'm guessing that she's not rich. Let's see what she does. Forewarning, you're gonna have to read.
Yeah? All right, pop down. Let's wash our hands. Or they gotta put you down so they can wash hands, okay? Wait, Nathan, he's gonna pass out. I need you to help here.
All right, okay.
Come here.
Okay, so she was a lobbyist who quit to work at a startup called Mom Meetups that's going to fail because no one needs to pay for a meetup service when Facebook provides that for free. It also says that she makes no money at this startup. I mean, if you're going to kill your savings to do some dream job, then at least pick an idea that has a chance at success. I bet their appearance on this documentary was a lot more about advertising her business with a personal anecdote than it was about American childcare. That's sales 101 material if you have a connection to the media, like a former lobbyist might. Let's see what her husband does.
Nathan makes $100,000 after taxes. That's $65,000.
Nathan is an art director for an environmental nonprofit. That sounds like some job you'd hear about on House Hunters, but okay. He pulls in a net income of $65,000 a year, which is way more than the average, so good for him. But let's go over their expenses again.
So I pay about $5,000 a month for childcare for the 3 children, which is insane.
I pay about $5,000 a month for childcare. Gee, that's a really weird way to phrase that after literally 30 seconds ago in the documentary, it said that you don't take a salary for your job. It sounds to me like your husband pays for the childcare. I mean, at the very least, you could have shown some respect by saying we.
And rent is $5,000 a month. So we don't have that money.
What the hell? Tell me you live in New York without telling me you live in New York. Holy crap, like I joke about how horrendously expensive it is to live there and give out meme numbers like it being $3,000 a month for a studio, but I didn't actually believe people would pay $5,000 a month for what looks like a small apartment. These people are insane. Obviously, this story needs a little more context, so I'll start by saying that this clip featuring wife Rebecca Rossler and husband Nathan Rossler comes from a CNBC documentary done in 2019. The documentary is called Why Daycare is So Expensive in America. It uses the Rossler family as like that overly stupid person in an infomercial who can't use basic home supplies to tell us why we need socialism to fix all of our childcare problems. Let's get into it, but first, if you like the content you see on this channel, then consider making a donation. Viewer support helps keep me independent and it helps fund the channel. Links to my PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar pages can all be found in the description. And also, don't forget to support me on Alt Tech. Links to my Odysee, Rumble, and Minds pages can all be found in the description as well. Alright, let's get back to the husband and wife who need to be passively aggressively given Financial Peace University for Christmas this year.
The money will run out in the next couple of months, and at that point I actually have absolutely no idea what we're going to do.
Honestly, where did NBC find these people? Again, they're like that horrendously stupid person on an infomercial who can't crack an egg unless they spend $19.95 on whatever BS product they're selling. This is like the same infomercial scam, except it's on a news network. You two really can't figure this out? Well, you guys are from New York, so here's a Saturday Night Live sketch that will help you fix your problem.
Did you know millions of Americans live with debt they cannot control? That's why I developed this unique new program for managing your debt. It's called Don't Buy Stuff You Cannot Afford.
Let me see that. If you don't have any money, you should not buy anything.
Yes, it's really that simple. Anybody can do it. You're in the hole financially? Maybe don't spend your husband's entire net income just on daycare.
Childcare, to me, partially is amazing and wonderful, and I found the perfect situation for my family and for my children, for their development, and also it makes me physically ill because I have 3 children to the tune of $2,100 per child, and we don't bring in over $100,000 for a year, so we don't even cover the cost of what it is for childcare and half of our rent.
I just can't imagine spending my entire net income on a single service. Do you guys not buy food, have a car, have Disney Plus, or any other expenses? I've never had to pay for daycare, but I know that there is no way the average daycare can survive, by charging more than the average single income. So I did some research and found this California government website that was updated a little less than a year ago, which is more recent than the documentary. The most expensive category in one of the most expensive states to live is toddlers at $700 per kid a month, which means that Rebecca's husband, Nathan, in New York is paying 3 times the average rate for the most expensive category in California. Here's a different website from some random organization, so I don't know how valid it is, which is why I chose the California rates, but it does give averages for New York City. Based on these prices, they are paying like 2 to 3 times the market rate in their area as well. Judging by the information that I got from Rebecca's website, all of her kids were likely over the age of 1.5 when the NBC documentary was filmed. Even if these dollar amounts are too low, it is possible to take that massive savings that you have that's paying for childcare and use it to move to a state that's cheaper. Pro tip, don't live in a place that you can't afford to live in. Here's where the sleight of hand takes place to trick you into socialism. What companies like NBC will do is they will take people who are obviously making stupid choices, and then they will talk about how some Scandinavian country has the taxpayers pay for those stupid choices.
In other countries like Denmark and Sweden, the government foots most of the bill. In the US, the cost falls mostly on parents and providers.
Okay, but where's your evidence that those places are actually better than America? And I'm not talking about some single variable analysis where you just talk about whether people can afford the thing you're complaining about or not. I want to know how these socialized systems affect innovation, gross domestic product, work ethic, obesity, mental health, addictive diseases, and the average amount of wealth that each household owns. Also, it turns out that when someone can't afford something and you buy it for them instead of teaching them how to solve problems for themselves, they just find some other thing they want that they can't afford. This is why when the government says universal this or socialize that, they just keep adding more and more services. It's never just universal healthcare and we're done. It's universal healthcare, free college, universal childcare,
Universal childcare.
universal housing, or even universal tampon service.
A tax on a box of tampons. Do you think I choose to do this monthly? No, trust me. So why should I have to pay taxes when this is a medical necessity?
All NBC is doing here is saying, here's this thing you can't afford, and look how people in other countries get it for free. This is done to make you jealous, so you'll push for a bunch of things that just so happen to lead to the government getting massive amounts of power and money to spend not on the things it was intended to be spent on, but instead to be spent on all those wars you don't like or subsidizing and bailing out mega corporations who are screwing you over, all while showing you no evidence that these services actually make people's lives better. Here's NBC doing it again.
In Estonia, mothers are entitled to more than 2.5 years of paid leave. Fathers in Estonia are only entitled to 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the US is the only developed country where neither mothers or fathers are entitled to any paid parental leave.
I'm not saying they're wrong. What I am saying is that NBC is owned by Comcast, a multi-billion-dollar company. These shows have tons of staff working on every part of production, and you couldn't have a single researcher spend 10 minutes Googling to give some sort of proof that the system you're suggesting is actually better than what's already in place? I'm pointing this out because otherwise it leads to what I talked about in the Vox video I made last year. They made this argument that was something like the government paying for childcare will increase birth rates, but when you look at the data that they provided, the countries with the most government support for childcare had the lowest birth rates. Here's the reality. Most new ideas suck. If you're going to change an entire system, then you need to make some pretty strong arguments for why your plan works and show evidence of it working on a smaller scale with a multivariate analysis before you implement it in a society with over 300 million people. Because otherwise, this is what happens. They show Rebecca here in this documentary justifying her vast overspending, which means the second the taxpayers pay for her childcare, she's going to find something else to overspend on.
There's nothing cheap or affordable. You do what you have to do for your children, and you want them to have the best possible early childhood experience and entire life experience. So once you're a parent, doesn't matter what you have, what you make, what you do, it's all for them. And that's where we are.
Excuse me? What you make absolutely matters. Particularly you, Miss I don't have an income. Okay, so this person is nuts and or knows very little about psychology despite training to be a social worker. Honestly, she should try to get a refund for that degree. Kids model the behavior of their parents, so whatever you do, good or bad, they will copy it, which means Rebecca thinks it's a smart idea to teach her children to vastly overspend, burn through their savings, burn through their investments, and burn their opportunity to own property instead of rent it, just so her kids can go to a slightly better than average daycare. I don't care how high quality the care center you send your kids to is, that is the behavior they're going to learn. Rebecca is essentially teaching her kids to be permanent financial slaves who will own nothing and be happy so she can work for a crappy startup. A crappy startup that looks like it failed because I can't find it anywhere, and it's been close to 3 years since this documentary was made. Oh wait, look how she framed her failure on her website. After co-founding a business, Mom Meetups, I have now chosen to offer personalized one-on-one support. I think you mean that after your business failed because Facebook already does it way better, you needed a new grift. Way to lie with deceptive wording. I think the reason this is also nonsensical is because outside of the financial aspects of their decisions, the best daycare for kids is being raised by their own parents. The best education is all the life lessons that your parents teach you that guide you in the direction of success. Rebecca and Nathan are sacrificing the mental health of their children and destroying their finances, also they can live some New York feminist dream with 2 working parents making equal salaries. Not to mention that the most obvious solution to half of their financial problems is that if you have 2 kids that are costing you $5,000 a month in daycare and you don't produce an income, then how about you stay home and raise your own kids? I'm surprised that this seems to be so impossible for them to figure out. But we aren't done being ridiculous here. Take a look at this.
It's not just urban centers that are feeling the squeeze. The demand for childcare is way higher than the supply all across the country. More than half of Americans live in what's called a childcare desert.
Yes, but that is literally a problem that you guys created by ruining nuclear families and pushing women into the workforce. Tons of women who, by the way, if you actually talk to them, would say they would much rather stay at home and raise their kids. I can't tell you how many women I've heard say, I need a degree because what if I'm with a man and he leaves me? Or, I need to work because we can't afford to survive on one income. While those may be real issues that I've given solutions to in other videos, they aren't a genuine desire for a career. That's working out of necessity, which is much different from what feminism has sold to women. Compared to how often I hear those 2 prior reasons, I almost never hear women say, I want to be an engineer because I like building bridges and I want to bring value to society. And more importantly, compared to how many women I've heard say, I want to stay home and raise my kids. So yes, feminist news companies like you, NBC, created this problem and you are complaining about the problem that you created. Not only is there now a lack of childcare because you doubled the workforce, but it's also much more expensive than it would be if parents were taking care of their own kids because the demand is so high. I can't imagine that it would cost Rebecca $60,000 a year to watch her own kids. Rebecca doesn't need socialism, she just needs to stop making bad choices. And it's the same for everyone else. I swear, if you look at these anecdotes the news gives you to promote socialism and zoom out far enough in their history, you'll see a ton of bad choices they made in the past.
If your kid gets sick, you may have to call out. You don't have no one to keep them, so you can't bring them to work with you. So you have to stay home and get docked that day for work.
Naomi currently works at a university, but she said in previous jobs, if she called out sick, she didn't get paid.
This comment came from Naomi, who is a single mother. My question is, during the time that she wasn't working at a university, where was the father? Why can't he take care of the sick kid or provide enough financially so that taking a day off doesn't ruin your life? Why didn't you take the time to foster a good relationship before making the decision to have kids? Also, where is your network of people to help you with this? Traditional families in the past and the present don't just do all the work by themselves. They have networks of friends and family to help them out. Unfortunately, Naomi states that her mother passed away, and I'm sorry that happened. But that still doesn't prevent her from networking with other parents that she trusts to do some sort of exchange so that no one has to miss work if someone's kid has a problem. This is why I don't like it when the government solves everyone's issues. Every time the government forces the taxpayers to fix your life, you miss out on the opportunity to build valuable skills that make you a better, stronger person. Of course, there are some people who truly need help, but the vast majority of people receiving government aid could go without it if they learned a couple of valuable skills and learned how to foster better relationships. Oh, and also this. Here's a clip of Naomi talking about government-subsidized childcare.
The subsidy part is very tedious, and then it goes by family household income. For me, I'll be a family of 4. They'll say, okay, you can't make more than $42,000 for the year. So once they do their calculations, if you over by a penny, you don't qualify.
Can you see how that program literally encourages people to be poor? If you make 1 cent over $42,000 a year, you don't qualify, which means you aren't looking for ways to make more income because you'll lose your childcare. She might actually have to earn $60K a year to outweigh the welfare benefits she's getting, and that's just to be in the same place. This is a problem because a lot of people, maybe most people, don't get significant 50% hikes in their pay every year. Wages tend to slowly increase, so in order to get that $60K a year, she might have to sacrifice 5 years of childcare as her income grows. Obviously, she's not going to do that, so she'll stay in her place of low income. And I'm sure people will say, well, that's why we need to make these programs universal. For one, we don't have the money for that. That's a grift. Universal every damn resource you can think of is not going to happen. Two, I'm not talking about idealism here. I'm talking about how these programs actually function in the current day. Whether it's childcare, school grants, food stamps, welfare, Medicaid, you lose access to these programs if you make too much money, so regardless of what the ideal is, people will actively choose to work below their potential so they don't lose their resources, all while pillaging the people who provide the tax dollars for those services. So don't give me that universal idealistic crap. None of these programs actually work like that. But that's not going to stop NBC from continuing to gaslight you or just straight up lie because they know you won't do your own research. For example,
It's really expensive to raise a child in America. It costs more to send your kid to this daycare than it does to go to college just 4 blocks away.
Yeah, that's because this place you've shown here, the Brooklyn Friends School, is a private school, not a daycare. Plus, you compared it to a publicly subsidized state school. Like, holy crap, that was dishonest to compare a super exclusive rich kid's private school to a publicly funded college. This school has around only 900 students covering preschool to 12th grade. I'm sure the average New York City high school has way more students than that, and that's just covering 4 out of the 12 grades. Now, if the people at NBC saw my video, I bet they would try to weasel out of it by saying, this school has a daycare too. But come on, you knew what you were doing. How about you compare it to the average numbers I showed earlier, which are nowhere near what the Brooklyn Friends School charges. Also, obviously childcare requires more attention and is not as scalable as college, so of course it's more expensive for each person. This was a terrible comparison. The whole purpose of this data point was to crap on private industry, and I know that's the case because they don't give any credit or fairness to the other side. Everything here is just propaganda against real motherhood.
Some clients have given up their jobs because it doesn't make sense for them to work anymore because all the money they're paying is going to their childcare.
Oh, how horrible it is for a mother to have to stay home. What kind of sick world do we live in where parents raise their own kids instead of letting a third party do it? Again, feminism has created the problem it claims it wants to solve here. Rebecca from earlier can't afford childcare. A simple solution to not do a speed run to kill her family's savings is for her to quit her startup and stay home. Yet woke corporations like NBC are telling her that staying home is demeaning and encouraging her to make bad financial decisions that will ruin her future. Of course, if you know anything about history, then you know that propaganda outlets do things like that so they can make the solution to give the government more power and more control over your life. That's what this documentary is trying to sell.
Except for public education, almost every form of social service, social policy have been privatized.
And public schools are a good thing? Tell me, which schools are people jumping to go to? Are people these days jumping to homeschool their kids or put their kids in private school? Or do they just love that public schooling? Gee, even the left constantly complains about how much public school sucks. I mean, come on. Do you really want the government raising your kids after all the things that Zoom classes, TikTok, and Project Veritas have revealed over the past 2 years? Not to mention that the Khan Academy does a way better job teaching fundamental skills than any public school I ever went to, and it's free, to which public school is not. I know it seems like it's free, but that's because they hide the cost of it inside property tax that you have to pay for your entire life instead of just the years that you were in school. I'm not sure how that's cheaper. Like I said, you don't need socialism, you just need to stop making bad choices. A government providing all these services is monopolistic, and that is just as bad as some mega corporation like Google or Apple controlling most or all of an entire market. It baffles me to watch people say how bad it is for basically 2 companies to own the entire operating system market for cell phones, yet they're perfectly fine with giving the government a monopoly over healthcare, schools, and childcare. What happens with a monopoly? Services get more expensive, and service gets crappier. In terms of electronic devices, do you think it's a coincidence now that Samsung and Apple own a giant percentage of the cell phone market that you can't replace your phone battery anymore? They are also removing the audio jack. You can't expand your memory anymore. And last, Apple will do sleazy shit like shut off your phone camera if you try to repair a broken screen at an independent repair shop. This is a lower quality product than what phones used to provide, yet phones are more expensive than ever. Also, what exactly do you think the government's going to do when it provides all of your crucial resources that you need to survive, like food, housing, medical care, schools, electricity, water, etc., when you say things they don't like? Well, they're going to do exactly what big tech does when people speak out of line. They will accuse you of being hateful and then remove your access to those services. Now you have no place to live and nothing to eat. And don't think they aren't already doing this. So how about instead of allowing this to happen, we cut back on our pathological behaviors and learn a few new useful skills to increase our value so that we don't need other people to pull our weight?
So for years, I was very good at savings and always put money away every month, every week, every opportunity.
Yeah, well, that's not really how it is now, is it? Sometimes the present can rewrite the past. If you make good decisions for 10 years and then make a colossally stupid choice at year 11, it destroys the meaning of the prior 10 years, just like all the Matrix sequels ruined the original movie. You can also rewrite the past in a positive way, which is why every so often I try to point out to all the people who waste their lives playing video games all day that they aren't actually wasting their time. Many of the games you play have taught you valuable concepts on how to be successful, and if you would just apply those things to real life, you would be in a much better place. But the more important point here is that Rebecca was previously disciplined and now she's not. The price of her losing her discipline by living a lifestyle that she and her husband can't afford is that they have lost their freedom and become slaves to someone else's will. Maybe not in the current moment, but how much longer can they hold out spending twice their yearly income before JP Morgan Chase or Wells Fargo becomes their new slave owner? There's a price to being free instead of being a slave to some crappy bank or group of political grifters. The price of freedom is discipline. Why are there so many people who are debt slaves who will completely lose their shit if they experience one minor life crisis? It's because they aren't willing to pay the price of freedom. The price of freedom is getting rid of your addiction to always having the newest stuff. You don't need the newest phone. Apple and Samsung have been releasing the same phone with slight upgrades for like the past 5 years. A cell phone is not like a computer in terms of usefulness for processing power. You don't need an ultra-fast processor to scroll down on Facebook or play Raid Shadow Legends. Even the cameras don't improve that much. You don't need a new car. A car that will drive for 20 years loses like 70% of its value in 4 years. Why would you commit yourself to 5.5 years of indentured servitude just so you can show off to your neighbors who don't care anyway? The irresponsible thing that Nathan and Rebecca did is that they didn't make adjustments to live inside of their budget despite the mountain of choices that they had, particularly if they had a savings large enough to dump $120,000 a year on rent and childcare. I mean, hell, you can move to a cheaper state with that family for less than 10 grand. So stop letting other people take control of your life simply because you don't want to make a few sacrifices. But with that said, I think that's enough for this video. So if you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, comment and share. If you would like to support this channel, then you can do so with PayPal, Patreon, or Subscribestar. You can find all of those links in the description. Last, don't forget to check me out on Minds, Odysee, and Rumble. You can also find those links in the description. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.